Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Avon Advisory Plan Commission meeting. If you are interested in having a copy of the agenda, they are available on the tables to the right of the audience. We will be conducting business as outlined on the agenda. From time to time, the board may deviate from the agenda. As president of this body, I will inform those in attendance of any deviations. This meeting is being recorded for the public record. Because of this, we request that personal conversations are kept to a minimum and that all cell phones are set to vibrate. Any phone calls should be taken outside of the chambers. If you are interested in commenting during the public hearing portion of the Commission's deliberations, please sign up on the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Please address your comments to the board and not to the staff or to the petitioner. Your comments should relate directly to the case at hand. During the conduct of the public hearing portion of the Commission's deliberations, the petitioner will have 10 minutes to present their case to the Commission. Remonstrators will have 10 minutes to present objections to the petition. Persons in support of the petition, other than the petitioner, will have 10 minutes to present support for the petition. Finally, the petitioner will close the public hearing portion of the presentation with a 5-minute rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed, no additional testimony will be heard unless it is solicited by the members of the Commission during the question and answer phase of the Commission's deliberations. Subdivision plat and development plan petitions are ministerial requests, meaning that if the proposal meets the requirements set forth in the town's development ordinances, the Plan Commission must approve the request. In the interest of transparency, state law requires that the Plan Commission hold a public hearing, even if the development proposal must be approved. Responses to public comments and questions may be given once the public hearing portion is closed. We understand that there may be several persons who wish to speak. In order to keep the meeting running in a timely fashion, we would request that you not repeat previous comments. Thank you for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting. Again, welcome to our meeting, and please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Bill Reed. Here. Sandra Spencer.
Here.
Dave Goffin.
Here.
Lisa Pike. Is absent. Catherine Randberg.
Here.
Bob Lugenberger.
Here.
Greg Newsom.
Here.
Very good. Move on to the approval of the meeting minutes from our July meeting. Has everybody had the opportunity to read the meeting minutes? And are there any suggested edits or changes that we would like? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I move we approve the minutes of July 24th, 2023.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting minutes are approved. Okay, now we go on to public comments, and this would be an opportunity for anybody who is here to speak about anything that is not on tonight's agenda. If it's on tonight's agenda, then we ask that you wait until that item comes up. But if you'd like to speak to something that is not on tonight's agenda, now is the time to come forward and speak to the commission. Is there anybody who'd like to come speak to anything that is not on the agenda? Sir?
Hello.
Please state your name and address.
My name is Dan Stevens. I live at 6754 White Oak Drive in Avon, which is part of Oak Bend Estates. My question is in regards to the Manors of Avon, which was approved back in November. I have no objections to the new subdivision going in. But since that approval, they have changed the drainage plan for that subdivision. And even though it looks like a great drainage plan, as far as I can tell, I'm not an expert in that area, one of the concerns has always been the huge tree line that borders the south and west borders of that lot. With this new storm sewer plan, they're bringing the storm sewer clearing of trees all the way up to our property line. As a result, even trees that are on our property may die a year or two down the road due to the disruption of the roots. Now, it's a sad thing that we're going to lose all those trees to begin with, but the developers have decided they wanted to move the storm sewer line all the way to the back edge of the property's lots. So my concern is when these trees die, and some of them will, I mean, some of them are well over 100 years old. It takes two people to put their arms around them. Some of the trunks are so big. That is going to be on the homeowners to remove those trees, which could cost thousands of dollars because some of them are so huge. Is there any recourse for the residents of Oak Bend to be reimbursed not only for the loss of the trees, but for the cost to remove those trees if those trees die after the construction process is ended? Because, you know, it doesn't happen right away. I built a lot there, and I lost trees over the next 5 years due to the construction process. So that's my concern. Who's going to pay those costs?
We can't address that this evening, but I can certainly direct you to staff, and they would be happy to take your name and number, and that would be the appropriate people to
Thank you.
talk
I
to.
wanted it on the record because at that last meeting, we had talked about the trees, and it was under assumption they were going to try to maintain as much as the tree line as possible, not only for us, but also for the new residents who would be buying those lots. Surely they would like some beautiful trees on their property. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to anything that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing no hands, I declare the public hearing portion of this meeting closed. Or public comment portion, I should say. It looks like we have 2 requests for continuances. Mr. Peoples?
Yeah, that's correct. We have 2 requests for continuance. Both of these cases were on your agenda last month. Both of them were continued because there were certain revisions to the site plan that needed to be done, in some case as a result of actions of the Technical Advisory Committee, and in another case as a result of actions by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Those 2 cases, DPR 2306, Sudan Trucking, that was one where they'd gotten a variance and the BZA requested that they pave a portion of their storage lot. And so we needed revised plans on that one. DPR 2310, Avon Business Park, I believe in that case, either Technical Advisory Committee or the Plan Commission had some questions and comments about the architecture of their building, and they were going to go back and take a look at that. We haven't gotten revised plans on either one of those. So we're requesting that both of those petitions be continued to September 25th, 2023, so that we can get revised plans for them.
Any questions for staff regarding this request for motion or request for continuances?
My only question is, how many times do they ask for a continuance?
We have a rule in the rules of procedure that they must be heard within 6 months of the time they were initially scheduled for hearing. Last month was the first month that last month was when they were initially scheduled for the first time. And so they have, they could be continued at maximum, I think, to the January or February meeting. But my understanding is both these land uses will get their revised plans to us over the course of the next month, next 2 weeks or so.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff? Do I hear a motion?
I'll move that we continue DPR 2306 Sudan Trucking and DPR 2310 Avon Business Park to the September 25th, 2023 meeting of the Plan Commission.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Both of those agenda items are continued to September 25th. And now we move on to old business.
So we have DPR 23-12, that's Washington Township Park Maintenance Facility. This is a request for approval of a development plan review petition to allow for the development of a 3,456 square foot park maintenance facility located at the Washington Township Park. This request does included two waivers initially, and we'll be going over that. Waiver A was UDO 7.10, a request for relief from the architectural standards for an institutional building. And waiver B, UDO 6.1 to 6.8, which requests to relocate all or some foundation landscape plantings to around the park pickleball courts. And that's different from what was asked for last month, and we'll get deeper into that. Here's some brief history on the lot. In addition to these development plans and plats, you heard this last month, in which you chose to continue it, and we'll touch on that as well. This is the location of the proposed maintenance barn here along Whipple Lane in the Washington Township Park. And here it is as well. You may notice it is slightly, it's moved slightly from the previous location that you heard. Again, it's to develop a 3,456 square foot park maintenance facility for the purpose of storing park maintenance equipment, such as lawnmowers and the like. This request is consistent with the standards of the Unified Development Ordinance, except for that the building deviates from the architectural standards for this use. Two waivers were sought at the July Plan Commission meeting, the architectural standards and landscape standards. After receiving feedback from you all in July, the petitioner provided staff with a revised plan, which included an alternate building location and landscaping that is consistent with the standards of the UDO. The architectural design and waiver request is the same as you saw previously. However, they have provided us with more details regarding the proposed color. The proposed landscaping as depicted in the revised site plan is consistent with the UDO standards, and therefore waiver B would not be required. However, in conversations with the petitioner, they did propose the possibility of relocating all or some of the foundation landscaping to around the new pickleball courts. Staff finds that proposal doesn't necessarily align with the intent of the landscape standards and the feedback given by the Plan Commission at the last meeting. But upon evaluating it further, we wouldn't object to the relocation of the west and north side foundation plantings, as those are for the most part not immediately viewable by the public. And we'll take a look at that here. This is the original proposal that you all saw last month. As you can see, the maintenance barn is located directly on Whipple Lane there. And you all had brought up comments or concerns regarding the building's proximity to this area and to the surrounding buildings. You had comments regarding its compatibility architecturally with the other buildings as well. And so this is what the revised proposal proposes. It moved the building further west away from Whipple Lane, and it is hidden by an existing tree line here. Not completely hidden, but it is obscured by the existing tree line there. In addition, they provided us with a 5-foot landscaping, foundation landscaping around the entirety of the building as required by code, and they have planted for ornamental trees to the south. So here's, I mentioned previously that we would not necessarily object to the foundation landscaping to the north and to the west to be relocated, as it's not very viewable by the public, specifically from those areas that are frequented. Regarding waiver A, the proposed building is still proposed to be constructed of metal panel siding, consistent with the design of a typical pole barn. They have added notes on their elevations that indicate that the building colors are to match the surrounding building colors. The roof is going to be green, the trim will be green, and the building is going to be tan. I believe the petitioner's here with a slideshow that'll show those colors in more detail. While we were supportive of the original waiver request for the architecture, this waiver request is further remedied by the revised building location behind the existing tree lines and with those new trees planted on the south, the additional distance from Whipple Lane, and then the aesthetics being augmented by the foundation landscape plantings. Here's the elevations again. You all saw these last month. They are the same. But here's the little note that was added since. If Plan Commission does choose to approve the waivers, then we do recommend approval of DPR 23-12, Washington Township Park Maintenance Facility, subject to the following conditions: that any revised plans comply with all commitments and conditions noted as part of any approval granted. The development shall comply with all relevant portions of the town code and comments by Public Works, the Fire Department, Hendricks County Surveyor, and Crossroad Engineers at the pre-construction meeting. And then since they've added the landscaping here, I've added a condition since the last meeting that says that a landscape bond is required per section 6.1D2 of the UDO, and that bond must be provided to the town prior to the issuance of a C of O for the subject site. I'm available for questions.
The question I have regarding the waiver for the foundation landscaping plantings to the pickleball course. Pickleball course has nothing to do with this request. Is that true?
That's true, yes.
So then why would we entertain that?
Because they've requested it.
Thank you.
So if I understand that there's no significant change to the architectural proposal other than the colors.
That's correct, yes. Well, the colors, I believe, are the same as they proposed last time, but they're prepared today to give you a better idea of what those colors are.
Okay.
As they, from the pictures I saw, don't necessarily align with the elevations that were provided.
Just since the pickleball courts were brought up, do the construction of those require landscaping?
No.
Okay.
Is the north side of the building viewable from the splash pad?
It may be viewable from the splash pad, yes.
Okay, because you said the landscaping wasn't publicly viewable. So we're recommending the moving of the landscaping.
I said for the most part, they're not immediately viewable by the public.
So then the screenshot, you just showed one where they're going to, now they've proposed to move the building to, is really, before it was in front of the tree line, now it's behind the tree line.
Correct.
So can you go back to your picture? There's a road cut then that still comes out onto Whipple Drive.
Yep, that's the trail that leads to, I believe, Ridge
There's a
Hill.
trail there, but that dark asphalt is a road cut then too, correct?
Yeah, that would be the road cut to the building itself, yes.
So is that still going there?
Yes.
So how many trees then are they going to have to take down to put that road cut in?
I don't believe they're removing any trees.
Any further question? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Any further questions for staff? Okay, we ask the petitioner to come forward, please.
Thank you. Matt Maple with HWC Engineering, 135 North Pennsylvania Avenue, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204. Thank you. I think, Ian did a good job of kind of explaining everything up to the date. We were here last month, and we talked in great deal about, the landscaping and the building. I have with me Laura Helmick of the Parks Department to discuss a little bit more detail about kind of the building and the intent and all that stuff of what's going on. If you have questions, she's certainly willing to answer those as well. I put together just this little slideshow here just to try to give you a bit more detail on top of what we had previously. So this is the splash pad that's immediately to the north of there. I was trying to, depict the colors to try to show that we're trying to have a cohesive matching color intent here. So they have basically two colors, a green and a tan, a tan building with green trim. very, very, this is a very rural park type construction block building with just, paint essentially. So here's a picture from Whipple looking, back towards the site. This was taken after the meeting last month with the foliage on the leaves. So the building would then be sitting behind that row of trees that's right out there. I went ahead and took a picture of the pickleball courts just to show you the area that could really use and be benefited by some landscaping far more than over by the building. I think we've said, we've got to build this building, so we would be fine with the plantings, but it just makes more sense to us and, I believe staff, after talking through everything to try to improve this area over here that doesn't have anything. So that was just kind of our attempt to try to make things a little bit better. That's essentially it for what I've got. We're here to answer any questions and, talk about what we can do to get this completed. Would you like to say anything, Laura?
Yes. I do want to mention Laura Helmick, 7590 South County Road, 450 West, Stylesville, Indiana, Park Director with Washington Township Park. I do want to mention, before there was a question about whether the north side and the west side would be visible, there's actually by the splash pad area, that row of trees to the other side, there is a large cattail. We have a drainage ditch that we grow a lot of tall cattails in. So you actually can't see that side of the building from the road until you're right up on it. That's why, we'd be happy to do the landscaping all around it if you would like. We just suggested that maybe we take the shrubs that you won't be able to see and put those by the pickleball courts just to make that so you've got two buildings that are a little bit more aesthetically pleasing.
Are those are fairly young trees that have been planted there that the building's going to be that you're proposing is put behind, correct?
They're not fairly young in
It's kinda
my
hard to see.
opinion. So they have been there since before I got there a little over 8 years ago.
Okay, my eyes aren't what they used to be.
I don't think I can zoom in.
Questions for the petitioner? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. We need to go to public comments. Sorry. Is there anybody here who would like to comment on this particular agenda item? If not, public comment for this agenda item is closed. And now, questions and discussion.
My question is location. There is a gravel road just to the north of where the proposed site is being presented, where there is an existing tent that's been put up there, some temporary facility. To me, that would make more sense to put it at that location because you already have your road cut, and it's a gravel road cut, and it is off the road versus flipping it over to the other side.
Did you want the petitioner to address that?
If they want to do it now, or if anybody else has any comments.
That area is actually where our disc golf course is. We have 18-hole disc golf course, and to build that building in that area would interfere with that disc golf course that's already been built.
I did see there was one hole there, yes.
There's several back there.
I know, but I'm not saying go back there. I'm just coming to where that tent is. That's right there by the disc golf course, right? I don't know how big the tent is compared to the size of this building. But if you can put a tent there, then can you put a building there?
I would worry about the disc golf players interfering with that building, hitting it, those types of things. The tent is more of a temporary structure, and the sides are not damaged when hit by those discs.
I have a question. If we could go to the slide that shows the layout of the building on the property.
That was in.
I think that's one of ours.
You gotta jump back.
that one.
Yeah, there we go. So this is designed for vehicles to enter as well?
It's really not, I don't think.
No, the only vehicles that will enter it are our UTVs that we have, Bobcat and our New Holland Rustler. This building is mostly to store just equipment. With the amount of services that we're offering, we need more storage facilities. So your snow blowers, mowers, and then also just some of our camp equipment.
Okay. So there are, if I recall correctly from last time, there were garage doors?
Yes,
And there are garage doors on this as well?
Yes,
And that would be on the east side of the building where we see those two cut-ins?
yes.
Okay.
So is there a need for a driveway then? Can you do it without the driveway?
Yes.
But that would concern me with regards to when it's very rainy or muddy. Are we creating problems with other problems with the landscaping? Or as happens when there's regular traffic over a period, does it end up creating a de facto road?
I don't foresee that being an issue, just because there are several different ways we can go around getting in the building, but most of the traffic would be lawnmowers coming out.
I think we had the driveway on there kind of as a master plan, if needed, kind of to your, if stuff started to get torn up, then the driveway would actually, kind of go in. We could probably get away without it at the beginning, I would think.
Could we make a motion to approve it without the driveway? Include that in our motion?
So it's good, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know if I would support not having the ability to put a driveway in though. I mean, I think looking for future use, if there's the need to move vehicles in and out of the building, I would support having a driveway there and make that a useful area that goes with the building.
They're showing it as an asphalt driveway. Is that what you're still recommending then, or would you allow gravel?
That's not what we're looking at here in this plan, so I guess I'd look for that to come forward if needed, or staff would address that.
Is this proposal that you're presenting tonight inclusive of the driveway?
What do you mean by inclusive of the
Are
driveway?
you including the driveway in your proposal tonight?
Like Matt mentioned, we can either have the driveway or not have the driveway. It really is indifferent to us. Our main priority is having the building.
Okay.
Would you be tearing down any or knocking down any of those trees? You
No.
showed pictures there before. How wide is your driveway and how wide is the,
I think it was either 10 or 12 feet,
when
just enough
you-
for a
yeah.
car, like a single lane.
There is a big gap between two of the trees, and that's where we plan to put that driveway.
I went and measured after the last meeting. It's like 30 feet between the trees.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
My question is, if we put a motion in without a driveway, what happens if they need one later? Do they have to petition again?
Staff can help us.
Yeah.
Well, if you're modifying, if you prohibit the driveway, then they would need to come and modify their development plan review petition. You know what I'm saying? If you just leave it up to the parks director to discern whether she needs the driveway, doesn't need the driveway, install a driveway, don't install a driveway.
So we could make that an administrative decision on the part of the Parks Director as to whether or not to put in a driveway?
Yeah, I mean, I would normally defer to the parks director for something like that, because she knows the park, and she knows what she needs there. That's my sort of philosophy on park improvements like this. The director is sort of hired to know what she needs to install on her park to serve her operational needs. And if she needs a drive to it, I would let her do the drive. The pickleball courts themselves didn't need a development plan petition because they were at grade improvements, just at grade with the fence, but at grade improvements. So we didn't require a DPR on the pickleball courts. And I would consider a drive similar to a pickleball court, or it's just an at grade improvement for accessing the building.
So since you bring up the pickleball courts, I see that we have a proposed motion here to relocate all or some foundation landscaping plantings around the park pickleball courts. So can you just explain that a little bit?
We just plan to add the plantings that would have gone to the north and the west of that building. We plan to put it around. I don't know if we can go back to the slide where it shows the front of the pickleball courts, but I would like to add it to the front and all around those pickleball courts, just making it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing and more in line with what we currently have around the majority of our buildings.
Okay.
I feel like this would make both amenities a little bit more eye-pleasing, and we can add some of the natural shrubbery that we would like to see. So you can see right there is the entrance of it, that first picture. We would like to add it on both sides and then also around the sides of the pickleball court as well.
And those would be that would be the landscaping that if we approve not putting it on the north and west side of the maintenance building, you would go ahead and use those plantings on the pickleball court?
Yes.
Okay.
So a comment on this, they've come back with an alternative plan and moved the building off the road, put it back behind some trees, which was one of our concerns last time. May not be in the location that we all want, but it is at least not sitting right on Whipple Road with a, no offense, but like the architectural design is a pole barn for our maintenance building. Ties the colors in with the other buildings, so they did or talk to you why the color selection there. So I think they've done a good job at least of trying to move it away from the road where our concerns seem to be like there's nothing aesthetically pleasing being right on the road. Puts it behind some trees that I'm assuming will continue to grow out, as well as adding some other ornamental trees. I mean, it sounds like if we don't give you a waiver, you're not going to put any landscaping around the pickleball courts. Maybe, maybe not, but that's the proposal right now. And I'd be okay with moving the landscaping from the north and the west sides to the pickleball courts if the rest of the commission agrees on that. If we don't give them the waiver on the architectural relief, then they don't meet the DPR. So then we don't have to approve the DPR. If we give them the waivers, then the DPR becomes ministerial. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay.
I agree with what you say. I think since we do have the tall grasses on the north side, and those are the kind of grasses that over winter, and the new growth comes up and the old growth just dies away during the spring, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that I don't see that being an issue with regards to line of sight. But yeah, I agree. I like the idea of making the pickleball court area look a little less stark with that landscaping. And I do also very much appreciate the effort that went into just moving the building so that it's not as much, it doesn't just immediately hit you as you're driving down Whipple Lane, and is a little more discreet, so. Any further comments or questions for the petitioner? Do we have a motion? Or two, or three?
I'll make a motion on For the approval for the architectural requirements, I move we approve waiver A of UDO Chapter 7.10, a request to provide relief from all architectural requirements, subject to no conditions.
I'll second.
We take a vote?
Bill Reed. 4. Jennifer Spencer. 4. Dave Goff.
4.
Mason Pike.
Here.
Catherine Hayden.
4.
Paul Gutenberg.
4.
Greg Zuzen.
4.
We have a couple more motions on this agenda item. Do I hear a motion?
Make another motion. I move that we approve waiver B of UDO Chapter 6.1-6.8, a request to relocate some foundation landscaping plantings from the north and west side of the maintenance buildings to around the park pickleball courts.
I'll second.
Take a vote?
Bill Reed.
4.
Jennifer Spencer.
4.
Dave Goff.
4.
Catherine Hayden.
4.
Paul Gutenberg.
4.
Greg Zuzen.
4.
And we have one more motion.
I will move that we approve DPR 2312, Washington Township Park Maintenance Facility, a development plan review to construct a new 54-foot by 64-foot maintenance facility, subject to the conditions outlined within the published staff report on file, since it has satisfied all the requirements for a development plan review under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
I'll second.
Take a vote?
Bill Reed.
4.
Jennifer Spencer.
4.
Dave Coffin.
4.
Catherine Ransford.
4.
Paul Gutenberg.
4.
Greg Zuzen.
4.
Motion carries.
Very good. Thank you so much. Okay, move on to our next agenda item.
This is ZA 2302, Avon Middle School West rezoning. This is a request for approval of a zone map amendment petition. Rezoning about 78.87 acres from AG agricultural to INST institutional to construct a 202,090 square foot middle school and associated athletic fields. Because this is an institutional rezoning, it does include a master plan. And that master plan approval in this particular case would be consistent with a development plan review petition. So you're not only reviewing you're forwarding a recommendation to the council. You're essentially, with this petition, forwarding a recommendation to the council on the rezoning and approving a development plan review petition at the same time. There's no real history on this property. We do have an administrative plat pending. The administrative plat pending really does not subdivide the property into distinct lots. However, it does establish drainage and other utility easements and plats right-of-way associated with the collector streets adjacent to this property. It seemed to be the easiest way to get these easements and rights-of-way recorded rather than do it through a series of instruments. And so we thought that doing it through the MAPA format, the administrative plat, would be the best way to do that. This right here is the property. It's outlined in blue. This is a little exception from it up here, a couple single-family homes. Property itself, as you heard, zoned agriculture, as is most of the property in this general area that's located within the town. To the north, there are two distinct subdivisions, and this subdivision wraps around here to the east of the property. Area to the south, there are some smattering of rural single-family homes, but for the most part, things in this general area are in agricultural production. As you heard, this is a request to rezone this property to the institutional zoning classification to construct a 202,090 square foot middle school. As an institutional rezoning, the petitioner has the option to include a development plan review on this. And that allows them to skip, not necessarily skip a step, that's not the correct way to put it, but to incorporate a step into this petition and reduce the time frame that they need for various approvals so that they don't lose 60 days or 75 days of construction time pursuing a development plan review petition. Now, if and you saw this in Murphy Park, for instance, the petitioner doesn't necessarily have to do that. The petitioner can submit a more general master plan, and then they have to turn around and file a development plan review petition, which is what happened with Murphy Park when they did their institutional zoning. But in this particular case, the petitioner filed everything that we need to review this from the standpoint of a development plan review petition. The upside to that is, you don't get a conceptual plan that shows what might be developed on the property. You are actually getting what is going to be built on this particular piece of property and all the details associated with that. Should this rezoning process be completed through the approval of the town council, the petitioner therefore would be able to begin construction as soon as they can conduct a pre-construction meeting on the site. Comprehensive plan, the future land use cluster map on this particular petition recommends agricultural development for the site. And this area of the town was annexed with a commitment or a guarantee, not necessarily a guarantee, but the town council wanted to make sure that this area of the town maintains its rural character. And so they rezoned, when they annexed this area, they rezoned the majority of it in the agricultural zoning classification. I think there's a few acres that are zoned E1, which is an estate classification. Now, the agricultural development, the agricultural classification for this particular area recommends either the retention of or the encouragement of agricultural development for this area, including agricultural tourism and those sorts of things. But it also allows for estate-sized residential land uses. So the two zoning classifications in this area that are the most applicable to that are the AG, which is what is currently zoned, or the E1, which is our estate zoning. School uses, the issue then is this request consistent with the comprehensive plan? And school uses historically have been located in and routinely and religious uses for that matter, are routinely located within residential areas to serve the community wherein they're located. And so they have historically been considered compatible with and complementary to residential development in both developed suburban residential and in agricultural areas. So the request, therefore, the staff considers it consistent with the plan. The thoroughfare plan on this one shows the County Road 100 South and 450 East are both designated as collector streets. The collector street by the thoroughfare plan has a 100-foot right-of-way. The petitioner in their administrative plat do show the dedication of a 50-foot half right-of-way along these streets, and therefore the request is consistent with the thoroughfare plan recommendation as well. We did do a traffic study on this particular property in conjunction with the rezoning, and that study did indicate that a northbound left turn lane and a southbound right turn lane were warranted for the north access drive into the school, and that a westbound turn lane was warranted at the intersection of County Road 100 South and County Road 450 East. The town employs a consultant that reviews all of our traffic studies and makes sure, and then they will provide a recommendation themselves on what the traffic study should warrant. This was reviewed by our consultant, and that review was placed in your packet. Also, the Director of Public Works and the town manager both also review it to make sure that the study and the transportation improvements that are needed for the area based upon their experience. If you remember, the town manager was the former director of public works here, so he's intimately aware of the transportation area of the town, and they've both reviewed it. And originally there were requested enhancements, and those requested enhancements were a dedicated left turn and right turn lanes installed at each entrance of the property. So on 450 there would be right turn lanes and left turn lanes at both entrances. Dedicated left turn shall be installed at the westbound intersection of County Road 100 South and County Road 450 East. Southbound and westbound right turn lanes installed at the intersection of County Road 450 East and the County Road 200 South, which is about 3/4 of a mile south of the property, and acceptable traffic calming improvements installed along County Road 100 South as it traverses through the adjoining subdivision to the north. Those traffic calming requirements need to be coordinated with the Hendricks County Highway Department, because that particular portion of 100 South is not located with, nor is that subdivision to the north located within the corporate limits of the town, and therefore it's outside the town's authority to do those. We have been in discussions with the superintendent of the Hendricks County Highway Department, and he is reviewing the proposal, and he concurs that something needs to be done. He just doesn't have the details, but he feels that he's going to have the details before the council meeting of what he wants to see as traffic calming through that subdivision. After that initial set of enhancements were suggested, the town and the school and its consultant met with the petitioner on August 22nd to discuss these improvements, and there have been some modifications. So in your staff report, you have a recommendation for a condition that references these original requested enhancements to the transportation system in the vicinity of the request. We've amended that request based upon the meeting. The first one is the same. Left turn lanes, right turn lanes installed at each entrance. School system has agreed to that condition. Right now, we're looking at a traffic circle. If you've been up at 100 South and 450 East, where those two roads conjoin, there are some safety issues there, and we are trying to figure out a way to accommodate this development and also do some of those or take care of some of those problems with that particular intersection. So currently the suggestion is a traffic circle, not a roundabout, but a traffic circle at this location. That way you've sort of separated that intersection out, but then you incorporate three-way stops at each entrance, so that right now there's a confusion about whether you should stop, whether you shouldn't stop. And most people will stop at that intersection when they don't have to. And it's just a strange intersection. And we are trying to work through some issues with that intersection. We believe we'll have more details on that when it comes to the point of the council meeting. The improvements to the south, 450 East and County Road 200 South, rather than actually have the school construct them, the school was concerned with constructing donations that far off-site of their property, and so what they countered with is that the town actually constructs them, and that they may provide a donation to the town, a restrictive donation for their share of those improvements to the south at 200 South and 450 East. The town agrees with that. We have no problem with that. The issue will be, of course, those improvements will lag, because what the town needs to do is program, design, and fund those improvements and then construct them. So those improvements wouldn't go in with the school development, but would be conducted at a later date. And then the traffic calming improvements shall be installed along County Road 100 South in accordance with the requirements of the Hendricks County Highway Department. And that's the same as the last one. So the traffic calming, and The highway department is looking at options. That's what they're looking at, because there are several options. One, the traffic circle somewhat does a little traffic calming at that location, but there's also opportunities for additional traffic calming within the subdivision itself along that collector street that traverses through the subdivision. Here is a site plan taken directly from the most recent revision of the plans. Here's one that's sort of in color, distinct. You get a little bit a better feel of the separation of the land uses of the school being right in the center of the property here. I'm sure the petitioner will discuss some of the operational details of how they intend to operate the school at this location. Oops. And the athletic field wrapping around this right here. We did the petitioner has a really extensive photometric plan associated with this development. We did review it. It meets the standards of the ordinance. And so there shouldn't be any significant impact on any of the surrounding land uses. Now, I want to say this, though, there will not be no impact. So you are, and this happens with illumination and this happens with traffic, you are introducing a new land use into an area that typically has not had a land use. So the area will change a little bit. Traffic patterns will change. And you are going to have ambient light from this use, which is currently a farm field, and during a new moon, it's probably as dark as you'll ever get. So yeah, you're going to introduce some ambient light. There will be a little bit brighter, but the ambient light won't exceed the requirements of the ordinance. This is how the school will look. 3 different sort of views from it: main entrance views, and then an aerial view from it. And then finally, this exhibit, sort of messy. I don't like usually doing these messy ones, but it does show you the different aspects, the traffic calming of 100 South as it traverses through here, the traffic circle, and it shows what originally was what we've sort of negotiated through right turn, left turn lanes at both of these entrances here, and then down here at 200 South, a town project to accommodate traffic at that location during peak times. The other thing to keep in mind is while morning peak will coincide with morning peak for the town, say about 6 o'clock, 6 to 8. So the opening of the school transportation schedule will coincide with the morning peak for the town. The evening peak will diverge from the school because of the way the school operates, and the evening peak for the town. So the evening peak for the town is somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6. This will probably peak somewhere in the neighborhood between 2 to 4. So there actually will be a shift in the evening peak on this one. So the majority of traffic from this school will not coincide with the evening peak. We do recommend that this Plan Commission forward a favorable recommendation of this request to the council. We do suggest that. Now that I'll read it. If I can, I guess I should have brought my glasses. The supporting road system shall be improved in the following manner. Dedicated left turn and right turn lanes shall be installed at each school entrance. A traffic circle shall be constructed at the intersection of County Road 100 South with County Road 450 East, and a 3-way stop sign shall be implemented. A restrictive donation for improvements at the intersection of County Road 450 East and County Road 200 South shall be submitted to the town, and the town shall program and construct the improvements, and acceptable traffic calming and improvements shall be installed along County Road 100 South in accordance with the requirements of the Hendricks County Highway Department. So that's our recommendation on this particular petition, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Bill, you made mention that the intersection at 100 South and 450, which I agree is problematic already, would be a traffic circle but not a roundabout. Can you explain the differences between those two?
Yeah, roundabouts are designed for traffic to not stop. right? So they're essentially yields. So you come up, you slow into it. If traffic isn't coming, you keep going. What a traffic circle will do is the traffic circle will be designed with the minimum radius necessary to get school buses through it, right? So we're not going to build a big wide roundabout like we would in some of these other places. But the other thing is they tee into it with the intent that driver stops before they enter the intersection. So it's like a three-way stop, only we've separated out the weird orientation of that and placed a circle in the middle of it to sort of make it a safer intersection than what it currently is.
And it would be traversed the same way, whereas if somebody was wanting to, instead of making a left-hand turn, they would go around the circle and.
Right. Yeah, they'd go around. You'd use it the same way you'd use a roundabout. The only real difference is it's usually smaller and you do
there's stop signs.
stop. Even if you have no traffic coming, you're supposed to stop into it. Of course, we don't stop at four-way stop signs anymore in this, but that's what's supposed to happen.
Thank you for that.
Bill, you talked at the beginning about the package that was submitted. Can you tell us, make sure that we understand what the next step is then after, if this is approved, what's next?
If this is going to be one of those weird cases, because in this particular case, what you're doing is, and this is atypical, but it's part of the institutional rezoning process. You're forwarding a recommendation to the council, and the council will then act on that recommendation. But when they do act on that recommendation, they are approving the master plan as part of the rezoning of this property. And they are therefore de facto approving the development review petition for this petition. Normally, the development review petition is in your bailiwick, right? So you forward a rezoning, it's zoned, then someone comes in and forwards or files a DPR, and then you approve that DPR. In this particular case, because it's a zoning ordinance amendment, it goes to the council, and the council then, when they approve the rezoning, also approve the DPR on the petition. It's technically called an institutional use master plan, but that's what they're approving. Because of the level of detail the petitioner has submitted, they will not have to file a DPR. The DPR that they show is technically two phases. Like 90% of it is built immediately, but they do also show a small addition to the building that could be constructed at some future date, and then they wouldn't have to come in for a DPR. They just go straight to permits for that second addition to the building when and if they need it.
And the other question I had was, if we forward the favorable recommendation and the council approves it, what else does the institutional zoning allow besides schools?
Well, in this particular case, they have to develop to the master plan, which the master plan is a school. So the institutional use limits it to a school.
So if the school decides not to build for whatever reason, which probably is unlikely, what else could go in an institutional?
Well, anything could go in. Any institutional uses, typically what the three that you'll see the most often will be a park, a school, or a church. But it could be a hospital. It could, any institutional use technically could file, but they would have to, whatever they built would have to be consistent with the master plan that was approved. So if the school, for some reason, decides they're not going to build the middle school here, and another institutional use wants to do that, they would have to come back in and file another master plan for your approval. So it's not like another institutional use could just buy the property and build on it.
Okay.
They're limited to the master plan that gets approved by the council, should the council approve the rezoning. And if a different institutional use wants to come in, a church or some other such thing, they would have to file for a master plan for that institutional land use.
All right, thank you.
Basically, DPR is getting approved through this as well. As the DPR is getting basically approved through this as well, I would request that our standard boilerplate conditions be tacked onto this as well, in addition to the traffic study recommendations.
Mr. Taylor, can you remind the commission and those who are present what our role here is today? Is this a ministerial decision that we're being made today, that we are making today?
We have two roles today. One is to make a recommendation on a rezone, and that is a discretionary standard. Now, on the master plan side of it, that's a ministerial, just doesn't meet our ordinance. If it meets the ordinance, then, and is consistent with the rezone, which of course it would be if granted. So this, you have dual roles here. So one is to make a recommendation on the rezone. The second would be, at the same time, you are essentially approving a master plan, which is a ministerial matter if it were to come back to you separately.
Now, the only thing that is presented to us today is the rezoning.
Right. With a fully developed master plan, however.
So how does that work? If rezoning is discretionary, but approval of the master plan is
Your ordinance, your ordinance allows a petitioner to file the master plan with the rezone. If that's the case, then if the master plan were not compliant, then you would have to, you would probably have to deny the rezone. But in this case, the master plan, your staff says, is fully compliant. And so then it gets to be rather simple. It's just that you're not going to see this master plan again. The plan commission would not. If the rezone is approved by the town council, it is approving the master plan as well. So it really is to you, it's a bifurcated procedure.
right.
It's just that there is a package inside this rezone called the master plan that you would be approving as well if you so choose.
So if the master plan, which would be a ministerial decision, which means, just to remind everybody here, a ministerial decision means that if it meets the ordinances, we have to say yes. If we find that the master plan does not meet the ordinances, then we can't even consider the rezoning. Would that be correct?
You can, but you would deny it or approve it with conditions. It would bring the master plan into compliance.
Okay.
I should add to that the proposal that the petitioner has submitted is consistent with the development standards of the institutional rezoning, the applicable applicable standards in Chapter 6, and the subdivision control ordinance and the comprehensive plan.
And assuming that that the commission agrees with you on that, agrees with staff, which we have a wonderful staff, we should always take the opportunity to say that, who does a great job with their doing their job. Then then the zoning is discretionary, but as you said, it's bifurcated, but it's all in one package. Okay, thank you for that. Other questions for staff?
Bill, I have a question. Was there any discussion, my big thing here is the supporting road system.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about conversation with Gibbs Road and 200 South. And I'm sorry, not Gibbs Road, 450 and 200 South. And a restrictive donation. What about 100 South and County Road 400, where you have that S-turn?
So the one of the assumptions that we had was that most of the traffic would head south out of the subdivision. Now there's going to be some traffic, or I'm sorry, out of the school. So we didn't look to the northwest as much. One, and there was an assumption made on the catchment area, the traffic catchment area of this school, which is going to be like right now 98% from the east. When we were looking at it, the assumption that we made was essentially all of Washington Township south of the railroad tracks. So that would be the area, the transportation catchment area that we would use to route to this. So we didn't look extensively to the west, to the northwest, because we didn't feel a significant amount of traffic was going to come to the school from that area.
But most of that area directly west and northwest, or a lot of that area is agricultural right now, correct?
Right now it is, yeah.
And we can anticipate in the next 10, 15 years, the odds of it becoming residential are pretty significant, I would think.
Well, that depends on the council. But there have been 3 attempts in the recent past to rezone property out in that area for residential development, relatively low density residential development, and none of them have made it through the council. And the council has made certain representations to the neighbors out in this area that they would keep this area rural.
When you say the council, you're referring to the county council?
No, I'm
When-
referring to our town council.
Your
When the
town
to-
council,
Yeah, when the
okay.
town council annexed this area, they made representations to the neighbors out in this area that they would try to keep this area as rural as possible. And there have been 3 attempts to rezone property in this area, and the council has rejected all 3 of them.
Okay.
So current, and quite frankly, one of our assumptions in the traffic study is that the background traffic in the area will not significantly increase, specifically because of the council's representations and their history of rejecting rezoning petitions out in this area in the recent past. So that's the reason we made that particular assumption, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So we don't believe that we're going to get a significant amount of traffic from the west based upon the way things are.
My only comment to that is also though underneath the jurisdiction of Hendricks County. Is that correct?
Well, the area to the west of the school is us.
Even on 400 is,
Well, once you get north of 100 South, it becomes the county. But everything south of 100 South is the town.
When they do the traffic study, how does that work? Where does the study start? Like, does it consider traffic from on 100 South from 525 to that 450 intersection?
In this particular case, we started out with the scoping meeting. And at the scoping meeting, the director of public works, the town manager, we sat in on a Zoom meeting and we went over just some of the basic assumptions and what intersections we wanted studied. And I believe I put the scoping meeting a letter in your packet as well, showing you where the petitioner started with at that meeting. Then they hire a professional engineer who has extensive experience in traffic. And usually what you would do is you'd use the traffic manual. There's a standard traffic manual, I think it's the ITE manual, that delineates traffic counts from specific land uses. And they would establish the traffic counts. They would apportion the traffic that's coming to and into it from different locations, and then they would run computer models on these different intersections to show what the impact, they will usually start out with capturing traffic counts or using relatively recent traffic counts in the area. And then they would use that and they would do traffic modeling to identify what would be the impact on those intersections. I don't know if I'm answering your question. In this particular instance, they didn't use the ITE manuals as much because the school has better information from the operation of its schools.
Yeah, I think, you answered my,
Okay.
I was just wondering specifically if they considered that traffic on 100 South from 525. And actually, I do see it in here.
Yeah, when we were looking at it, we were looking at that the traffic to this school is going to come from all of Washington Township south of the railroad tracks.
Any further questions for staff? Thank you all for a really good presentation. I know that we're all very appreciative of the work that you do. So that being said, the petitioner may come forward.
Michael Sullivan, Assistant Superintendent of Avon Community Schools, 10871 Weston Drive, Carmel, Indiana. I am going to start off by telling you the what and the why for the new middle school, and then my partners will talk to you about the how a little bit. The last school that was constructed in Avon was River Birch Elementary in 2010. In the last 13 years since River Birch is open, we've grown 2,300 students. We've been able to accommodate our growth in schools by extending our existing schools, using portable classrooms or trailers, and repurposing spaces that weren't originally designed to be classrooms. Last fall, our school district sought feedback from our parents, staff, and community about the best way to grow our schools and to serve our growing student population. After thoughtful deliberation and community input, our board approved a plan that would reconfigure our schools into K-5 elementary schools and 6 through 8 middle schools, and of course, Avon High School. To accommodate that transition, Avon School needs to construct a new middle school for the start of the 25-26 school year. As you may know, since 2010, the school district has owned the 80 acres just behind the parks of Prestwick subdivision. This is the only parcel that the school owns that's large enough to accommodate a middle school. And we spent the last 6 months in design phase and appreciate the town of Avon's collaboration as we seek to provide the best educational opportunities for our students. And on June 27th, we held a community meeting with the Parks of Prestwick HOA to share with them the need for the school construction and hear their concerns and questions. We had about 60 residents attend and have included information on our website about the project based on their feedback. We're aware that growth can certainly pose challenges, but we're fortunate that more people want to raise their families in our community. To speak to how we will accommodate these families, I'll introduce Jennifer from Veritas Group to elaborate on our requests.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Lash with the Veritas Group and appreciate the opportunity. As Bill mentioned and went through, we are requesting approval of
Could
the
you please
zoning.
state your address?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
6280 North Shadeland Avenue, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Thank you.
We're requesting approval of the zoning map amendment for that approximate 78.87 acres from agricultural to institutional for the construction of the new middle school. One of the things I would like to clarify, as we've been working with the town of Avon, and we are working through that administrative plat, we are actually now dedicating a 58.5 foot right of way. And that is in response to providing left turn lanes into the school as you're heading northbound. So to accommodate those left turn lanes and not impacting any of the residents on the east side of the road, we're taking that right away on the school property and widening it to accommodate a left turn lane into the school property. With this request also comes our development plan review in the form of an institutional master plan. So again, that we are this evening requesting approval for the rezoning of the map amendment from agricultural to institutional, as well as approval of our development master plan in the form of an institutional master plan. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Rolfson with Performance Services. We're the design builder for Avon Community Schools for the project. Location is 4670 Haven Point Boulevard in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm going to walk you through just a little bit of the kind of the overview of the project, a little of the logic for the layout. And if I could have the rendered site version of the plan. Oh, there we go. Forward. There we go. Okay, thank you. Okay, so in terms of situating the building kind of right here, the center of the property, a little bit of the logic for the location of the building, high ground of the site. It's facing County Road 450 East. That is the more favorable face for the building. There's limited frontage on County Road 100 South, and so orienting that direction was favorable for entrances. We have plenty of ability to locate the kind of approaches to the building along that face. A little programming information for you. The building is designed for grades 6 through 8, and the target capacity of the building is 937 to 987 students. Mr. Peoples had mentioned potential for future growth. It could grow to about 1,150 in the future if it's needed, just if the community continues to grow and that growth is needed to be transferred to the school district. There's a possibility there for that addition, and I'll point out the location for that here in just a moment. The building is divided really into a north and a south half. The north half, kind of this piece right here, is a 2-story academic wing. The south half of the building is right here. That is primarily dedicated to shared use functions, event spaces, kind of like cafeteria and gymnasium space, and after hours functions of the building. So that's intentional to subdivide that building that way. That way, for after hours use, the school will be able to be locked down on that north side. Academic area is not available for access for patrons at that point. And then the main entry point really would fall kind of right in the middle there, addressing 450 East. So that's a little bit of the building organization for you. In terms of the athletic and recreational support elements around the building, those were placed on the south side, really act as a buffer between those neighboring communities. The football field placed on the west side of the building here, and can use the building as somewhat of a screen for that, but also placed in proximity to the event portion of the building. And so it can then use and share the event parking zone right here for those portions of the site. We are planning one football field with a track that is lighted, as mentioned. There are 4 ball diamonds, 2 softball and 2 baseball. None of those are not lighted fields. Those are just strictly ball diamonds. There are 2 practice football fields. They kind of act as a little bit of a buffer between the property, between the neighboring properties. And then there are tennis courts right beside the building here, immediately on the backside, utility use side of the building. In terms of parking and drive organization, I mentioned here, this is event parking areas, also the bus loading, unloading zone of the building. So it can support up to 27 buses. We anticipate about 18 or 19 buses to start with, and then potential growth if needed down the road. It's anticipated that buses will enter from the south and in that lot and then exit the same direction, kind of rotating back out through that same lot. Visitor and staff parking is immediately to the east of the building, addressing that front entry point. That single secure front entry point really is the primary entry point to the building. There's a single event entry point here, and most of the other access points to the building are really primarily exits. Those are really the two considered primary entry points into the building. For auto pickup and drop off, for those parents that wish to do that, we do have a substantial pickup and drop off lane associated with the property, 70 to 85 car stacking, and they would loop in kind of around here and then drop at the front door is the idea, then loop back around and out the same entry point. So separating autos and buses is really a primary tenet for school districts, just so that you don't have that conflict with traffic. We have parking on the site for up to about 527 parking spaces. A majority of those are located right here. There might be a handful kind of back in the service area. Service entry points, there's a utility yard right here. That's where primary utilities enter the facility. It's also where receiving would be done. The cafeteria is on the south side right there. And that cafeteria would have its own receiving area addressing that south kind of bus entry zone of the property. We do plan on meeting all the requirements for landscaping on the property. Landscaping, of course, would be addressing the parkway ordinance. We have landscaping, then to buffer the parking lots and intermixed within the parking lots, as well as a residential buffer on the south side and around these this portion of the site where the residences exist as well. There is a wet detention area planned right here, and there is a dry detention area planned on the north side of the site, kind of between the parking lot and the road. In terms of access for vehicles, we do have left turn lanes on the northbound lanes here And we're able to maximize stacking really for autos kind of in this zone right here between the bus entry point and that lane, and then as well maximize stacking here from buses as they enter the site between this entry point and the property line. The very far north portion of the site really is to remain undeveloped, grassy area essentially, and probably an overlay area for some of the excess topsoil that we have on the property. And I think that covers the high-level overview of everything related to the property. We did, as mentioned, conduct a traffic study and studied intersections around. We do have our traffic engineer present to be able to respond to questions in that regard.
Before you sit down, that northwest quadrant up there on 100 South, you didn't identify what that was going to be used for?
So this portion right here, that is same as the northeast quadrant. Basically, it's kind of grassland, undeveloped.
And is that the plan to keep that undeveloped, or is that for future expansion?
I mean, it is. There's no planned development there. There's nothing master planned for that area. Really, what you see here in the master plan is what's intended. I didn't point out the building addition, which I meant to do that. Potential building addition, right? Kind of just to the west of the academic area that would allow for that additional classroom growth that would be needed, and would potentially be just a two-story extension of that, relatively small compared to the building extension of the building there.
Another question I have is you're going to have students from Parks of Prestwick coming to Avon and probably riding a bus. What's the percentage of bus routes going that way? Because you said everything was kind of going south.
I'll take a stab at this. I believe there is one bus that comes out of the, yes, Mike Rollinson's here with us. He is one bus that comes out of the Parks of Prestwick area. The other buses would be arriving from the south.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, if you'd like to have a seat, we'll go to the public hearing portion. We remind you that each petitioner or each remonstrator is allotted, I think is that 2 minutes? Is that correct, Ian? For comment. And we would ask you, in the interest of time and efficiency, to not repeat other comments that you have already heard. Ian, who do we have signed up? I'm sorry? Stevens. Last name Stevens. Anybody last name Stevens? Going once, going twice?
Oh, that was me. That was him.
Oh, that was for the previous one? Okay, very good. Next. Okay. Is there anybody who would like to comment on this agenda item? Okay, sir, if you could step forward and state your name and address.
Name is Scott Atwood. I live at 4090 East County Road, 100 South. And first thing, how do you reconcile the purchasing of the property for ag and to maintain a rural community area and then turning it into an institutional area? That's conflicts with what the original purpose of the land purchase was, or land change. And two, remember when you assume on traffic, I'm looking at you, Mr. Peoples. When you assume at traffic, remember what assume does. Because I guarantee that the people that are going to be leaving are going to be going out 100 South and going up to 36. How many buses, cars, sporting events that people are going to arrive and they're going to come straight off 36 because it's a straight shot, and that is a 90-degree turn with buses and vehicles and all that traffic trying to go through there, through all that. You know, it is. And then the other thought is a 50-foot right-of-way. How far does that 50-foot right-of-way go down 100 South? Is it the entire length of 100 South?
So this is a comment period.
Comment,
so-
okay. Well, then if it's a 50 feet down the entire 100 South, then like this gentleman was talking about, who's going to compensate owners? I have built a house, I have a sidewalk, and my well is on right inside my property line, which would be 5 feet, within 5 feet of the existing 45-foot right-of-way. So there's a lot of things, especially with dealing with other things. We were part of the 100 South widening and reconstruction, and we lost property there and ended up selling because of what that road was going to become. And we went as far west in Avon as we could, and we're still getting brought into that type of stuff. So that's all I say. We need to think long and hard about what we're going to do to this rural areas and not just immediately say, let's put a school in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak on this agenda item? Please state your name and address.
Yeah, Mike Mechanic, 4425 Notting Hill Drive. Concerned about the direction of the water and the sewage, where it's going to come from for the school.
Okay.
Okay. On the south side of the school, there's many horse farms. If you take that in consideration for the horses and the animals, the noise that's going to happen there. Think about that. I'm sure you have, or maybe you haven't. The concern is too, also, with the amount of buses that go through my neighborhood now, there's 5 that passes my house every day in the parks of Prestwick. Are these buses going to go to this school? How far are the buses going to come in from the west side, the south side? Are these kids going to be living close and get transferred to other schools farther away? Just keep them in your thoughts. I know the Board of Education owns a lot next to me, and there's a main water line that's there. What are you going to do with that? You going to sell it, build a house on it? Are you guys taking notes about this?
This is a comment section, and actually, the
But are you
petitioner
taking
will have
notes?
an opportunity to
I don't care if it's a
respond.
comment section or not. Are you taking notes? You should. Because we can bring it up again.
Thanks, sir. Anybody else would like to speak on this agenda item?
Gina Atwood, 4090 East County Road, 100 South. My comment and concern is the light from this new school, the wildlife that it's going to misplace. I feel like Avon is trying to become some kind of city, like my husband stated before. We were pushed out by all the big warehouses that you all thought you had to have. And we moved further west. We didn't want to leave Avon. We moved as far as we could, thinking that we would be safe. And now you want to build a great big school there. And I don't think that's very fair. I don't want that light from their parking lot. I don't want it disrupting the wildlife that I like to look at around my home. Butterflies, all that stuff. I'm not an environmentalist wacko, but I do enjoy seeing deer and the foxes and the wolves and everything else that's around my property. I feel like Avon is just trying to become this little mega place, and that's not what Avon is. And I don't know, I just don't want that. You guys keep trying to push me farther and farther, and I don't like that.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on this agenda item? Sir?
My name's Mike Woodruff. I live at 4485 Notting Hill Drive, Parks Prestwick. My backyard is ground zero, 100 South, 450. we find it really hard to believe that most of the traffic to this school is going to come out 200 south and take a right and come up 450 to this school. Our concern, and at Parks Prestwick, and really all the folks down 100 South, is when mom is running late and bringing the kids to school, are they going to go 525 all the way down to 200, go west on 200, go north on 450, or are they coming right through 100 South? And that development that we bought 17 years ago was never to be a thoroughfare for a large institution. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment on this agenda item? Sir?
My name is Greg Huffman, 1860 South, County Road 450 East. I'm not very articulate here, and I have no idea, though, what, as one of the gentlemen said, we've got horses, our neighbor has horses, that neighbor has horses, 2 doors down, that neighbor has horses, and we're going to have all this traffic coming up and down that road that was never intended for what we're trying to do here today. And have no idea, really. You all can't possibly know how much traffic is going to be up and down there, whether it's a school function at night or something on a weekend, and it's constant. It'll be constant, or at least that's our fear, that it's going to be constant. That there'll be always traffic, and our road is wide enough for 2 cars, but it's a county road. It was never intended to be used for the kind of traffic that you all are at least thinking about proposing. So again, just if you lived where we live, you probably wouldn't be sitting there where you're sitting now. Just think, please, to consider that. That it was, that acreage up there at the corner may have always been school property, but we were kind of cajoled into joining the, town of Avon, so that we could keep it agricultural. And that's what the intention was. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to comment on this agenda item?
Hello, vertically challenged. I'm Melissa Norris, 4528 Hampton Lane, Avon, Indiana. I have one question and one comment. The question would be for this commission, and I would be interested to hear what has changed since the 2017 land use recommendation. I know I heard that it's a recommendation of the staff to approve this, which would contradict, retract, whatever word you want to use, the 2017 agriculture recommendations. I'd be curious to see what's changed in the 6 years and why we would not want to keep that. My second is a comment. I've heard from the meeting that I did attend with the superintendent of Avon, as well as I heard again tonight, that the reason why this particular location was being chosen to build the school was due to the middle school not being sufficient to fit in a different plat. Looking at the plan, I would say that I would challenge this group as well as the school to really think about that, because it looks like a lot of what this plan is green space, meaning that football fields, softball fields, greenery. So I think you probably could build a middle school in another one of the locations that the school owns already. You can always build vertical too. I don't know if there's something saying we can't have 2 stories. I don't know why we have a single story middle school. So I would really challenge this group to think about that. I'm an engineer, and these are the kind of challenges that I give my team. So I would really want to see why we need a 70-acre plat of land that's been zoned agricultural and was encouraged to be kept agricultural for this school. And I have a 2021 graduate in my family, my son, of Avon, so I'm all about Avon schools. I love Avon schools. I don't feel this is the right location for this middle school due to numerous factors.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to this agenda item? Step right up.
Becky Short, 1486 South County Road 450E. I just wanted to address some questions about, it sounded like the transportation study is still being mixed out and reviewed. I would like to know when we would have access to that to actually see how it's going to impact each area. It sounds like they are predicting or assuming 90% of bus traffic will be straight up 450. As Greg had mentioned, our road is not wide enough. There's a lot of farms out there. So one, I would like the transportation more melted out to see what it's going, because there's only three ways. There's through the addition, there's around 400, 236, or there's down our road. So if it's not going to go through Parks of Prestwick, it's going to go through 400 or it's going to go 450. I'm not opposed to the school. I just like full impact of how it's going to affect our area, because it sounds like they had a meeting for the residents of Parks of Prestwick. If they had a meeting for the rest of us that it impacted, I wasn't invited.
Thank you. Is there anybody else present who would like to speak to this agenda item? Okay, the public hearing portion of this, on this agenda item is now closed. Would the petitioner like to provide some feedback with regards to the issues that were raised? This is your opportunity to rebut anything.
Yeah, Jerry Rolfson with Performance Services. I would like to respond to, there was one question about sewage, that sewer, it will be through WCCD, Sanitary Sewer District, in a connection to their main, which they are bringing to the site, but then we are connecting to and required to make provisions in accordance with their requirements for sewer. Water would be through Citizens Energy Group Water Service, which is nearby. So we're just connecting to that service, which has adequate service capabilities for the school. Related to traffic, you know, we don't take that lightly. We commissioned an engineer for that specifically, and we're aware of, you know, concerns from the adjacent neighbors and neighborhoods related to traffic, which is why we've been considering improvements and trying to work those out with all the stakeholders at various different locations. I would like to call up Scott Knable, who's with the engineer, just to talk a little bit, just kind of an overview of what went into that traffic study and the counts and how it relates to roads. I think that would help some of the people that have had questions here tonight to kind of understand how that was undertaken, and just kind of the background information behind it.
Okay. If you could state your name and address, please.
Scott Knable with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilley, 8790 Purdue Road, Indianapolis. So we were brought on board to conduct the traffic study. As Mr. Peoples indicated, there was extensive coordination with both the town as well as the county regarding the assumptions that went into that traffic study dating back. First meeting was early May. The outcome of that meeting was documented at the end of May. There was a traffic submittal, specifically just looking at the existing and future volumes about mid-June, prior to the submission of the balance of the traffic study. So obviously the traffic study has been submitted and has been reviewed, and again, in process of working out some of the details as far as the feedback that's been provided. Just a couple of points. There were a couple assumptions made that were intentionally conservative in the analysis. One was the full build out of the school, the full 1,100 plus students versus what is anticipated on opening day, which is slightly less than that. The other assumption, which not to get into too much detail, but there was an assumption in the analysis that often, my background is I've actually reviewed traffic studies on behalf of a number of communities, and what is often a comment that I've made and we've incorporated in this study is that we assumed a peak hour factor of 0.5. And what that means is, as you look at the traffic study and you see the volumes, the analysis assumes those volumes occur within a 30-minute period, which is what you really expect from a school type of land use. So it's a really a very conservative approach when looking at the volumes and basing the analysis on those future volumes. And even with that conservative analysis, the volumes that we're looking at resulted in the analysis showing intersections resulting in a level service A. So when we're into capacity analysis, you get a letter grade. A is good, F is bad. Typically, the break point for what is considered, quote, acceptable is in the C and D range. So we are well below that, even with some of those conservative assumptions. So as we work through some of those questions, in particular with the county on some of those assumptions, despite some of that early coordination, the feeling is that we're not starting at a point in analysis where we're at the CD level. We're starting at a point which is level service A. So would not expect a significant change in the conclusions, which was the basis of the traffic study at this point. So happy to answer any questions as far as what was in the traffic study at this point. Okay, great. Thank you. Yes.
Is there any aspect of a traffic study that looks at like, I guess, the probability of speeding and things like that?
There is not, I am not aware of any data that would say for volumes, for example, that X volume you would anticipate X percentage of speeding. From my perspective, speeding is more of a function of the environment of the roadway type than necessarily volume. So if you have a wide road, for example, which causes drivers to be more comfortable to drive faster, then you may experience non-compliance with a lower posted speed limit. So I feel that speeding is more about the roadway environment than necessarily volumes.
Okay, I was just curious. I
Right.
know, I think Parks and Presswick speed limit is 25. I just figure people rushing to get to school in the morning may have a tendency to want to go a little bit faster.
I mean, obviously that is a concern. I mean, being a 2-lane roadway though, I don't know if you're familiar with the term road diets. If you have a multi-lane facility, oftentimes a road diet will be applied to where you actually reduce it to a single lane. So I think that from that perspective, looking at the roadways within the study area, they're all single lane roads. So really the speed is going to be more influenced by effectively the lowest speed vehicle on that roadway, right? So as you get behind somebody, you're not necessarily expecting people to be passing on a 2-lane roadway. So whether those people exist today or in the future, the expectation is while you may have a percentage that are maybe predisposed to speeding, effectively you'll have that percentage of population that isn't, and we'll be effectively controlling the operating speed on the roadway. And of course, enforcement is a component too, but.
Thank you.
You use your experience then, there really are 3 points of entry here. 450 and 200 south, 450 and 100 south, and basically 400 and 100 south to get to this property. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So do you think, based on your experience, I'll use 450 from 100 south to 200 south, if we set aside enough right of way for this increased volume of traffic for that mile stretch?
Say again, for 450 and?
I don't,
450
are you the
is
person to
100
answer that
north-
question?
South to 200 south.
I believe the development plan proposes to dedicate the property that's.
One of the other people
needed.
would, I think, would probably have that information. I don't know that the traffic study takes that into consideration,
Sure.
or does it?
This traffic study does not get into right-of-way
Okay.
elements.
Before you go, as far as like speed limits, then do you make recommendations on speed limit changes? Or is that you just observe what's posted?
We do not make recommendations on changes to statutory speed limits. The assumption is that on 450, that there could be a speed or a school zone established during school hours. Other than that, the assumption is existing posted speeds would remain the same.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. And again, we've been discussing improvements in kind of the pre-stated areas along 100, 450 and 200, 100 and 450. And those yet to be resolved, but I think we're a party that wants to work those solutions out with the stakeholders. So those conclusions to be forthcoming. We have talked about wanting to limit traffic through the Parks of Prestwick on 100. So what are the steps that are needed? That discussion needs to have continued. We need continued discussion with the county on that to resolve those items, but traffic calming would essentially be slowing things to discourage traffic through the neighborhood and encourage traffic going other routes, primarily the 450 to 200 route. There was one question related to property purchase or right of way, I think, beyond the site. Our work is confined to our side of the street, and the right of ways that are talked about are solely on the school's parcel and not across the street. So all work is on the school's parcel and not on other parcels.
So
And
any
all
expansion of the road would happen on school property, not on the.
That's
of the
correct.
right.
We are not taking any property on the other side of the street for that. That was what Jennifer was explaining, the 58-foot right-of-way. That allows us to get those turn lanes in without having to borrow any land across the street, if you will, to be able to accomplish that. So we are making those turn lane provisions and providing the necessary right-of-ways by the collector street requirements for the town of Avon on all sides of the property. So the two street sides of the property.
So based on that comment, Bill, does that meet then in your report, the 100-foot right-of-ways that are proposed? It's all going to then come from the school's property and
Well,
not from the other properties?
58 feet of it. So normally what we would do, and especially along these old county roads, because county roads are usually built on section lines or quarter section lines, is we would have a dedication from the center line of the road, which is usually a section line or a quarter section line. And so if our thoroughfare plan says 100 feet, then we would take half of that on one side of the road, half that on the other. That's why they've dedicated, well, we would only have requested a 50-foot half, but in order to avoid having to take land on the east side of 450, what the school has proposed is to dedicate 8 more feet on their side so that they could build the improvements within public right-of-way, but they've just dedicated 8 additional feet that normally is not something the town would require. And yeah, I was going to chime in on the right-of-way issue. The right-of-way, the 50-foot half or the 58-foot half rights-of-way are only off the school's property. We're not going to take anybody's property and widen south of the school's property.
What about east? I mean, that's the thing on the, is it 450 or 400?
100 south up on.
No, I'm talking about the east, north-south road.
That's 450.
Okay, so we're not going to take anything on the.
On the east side of the center line? No, we're not going to go acquire
How do
right away.
we, so, I understand the concerns of the residents, like, so we say that. So when construction happens, how do we ensure that it doesn't happen?
Well, I mean, I guess as a public institution, the school may have eminent domain, but the town would have to exercise eminent domain authority. And really all we're doing is building capacity in the existing roadway system and probably putting, milling and overlaying from curb to curb on it. So there's no need for us to go further east based upon what the school's designed.
So we hold the school's construction company to those plans.
Right.
So that's our job of making sure that happens.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've reviewed them, and the improvements are all either within existing right-of-way or within the right-of-way the school is dedicating. There's nothing that's going to require us to condemn any sort of right-of-way anywhere else. And now, when we get down to 200, at some future date, maybe there would be a requirement, depending on the improvements that need to be done, if we need to incorporate a right turn lane or left turn lane or something down there, 200 south, but that would be in the future.
Okay, thank you. And then,
Limited.
so you addressed the water and sewage, and I think the question on the water maybe wasn't about connecting to citizens' water. It's about surface water flow. Because that tends to be a concern about when there's construction, where is surface water flowing? Can you talk to that, or how you would be looking to maintain that?
Yeah, I'll call my civil engineer expert, Jennifer Lash, back to the microphone for that discussion. But as I understand, there's existing drainage outflows that, in working with the county, we have to comply with the town and the county's requirements, and Jennifer can explain those provisions.
Before you move on, I have a traffic thing. So coming from the south and going north, if we're not taking right of way on the east side, are we going to have a stacking issue when that half an hour window, their buses are coming up from the south and they want to turn west? Is there going to be a stacking issue there?
I think that goes to the
Turning
question.
west into the school's property, is that what you're saying? We have the dedicated left turn lanes established for that.
There was a
And so-
question about that, I think what somebody said was, is that dedicated turn lane going to run the full length of 450? How, is that going to be an extra long?
The length of the school's property. So it will taper back out to, we're required to have tapers that comply with the approach requirements. And so it will taper to meet the existing right-of-ways at the property line. But there is stacking within kind of the new constructed turn lanes for up to 7 buses, I believe. And I don't remember the car count. If you have the car, do you have the car count?
I think we were close to 25 outside of the site, but we still had 75 to 80 internal to the
Yeah,
site.
so we have substantial stacking outside on that left turn lane in, should there be a delay. We don't anticipate there would be a delay based on the counts, because the cars are able to flow freely into the site and stack in the site. But should there ever be an issue, we have a lot of stacking out on the street as well.
And my last question is, as you had mentioned, there are still some outstanding items that need to be addressed. Will those items be addressed before it goes to the town council?
That is the intent, yes.
I would suggest that.
Yep.
Be done.
Bill, I have a question for you about the road development. So how does that work? So if they've got the west lane, I guess, if you're going north, and so they're supposed to allow 50 feet. Does that mean that west lane would have a bike lane and the sidewalk, or?
No,
what happens in-
the pedestrian and trail plan doesn't have any special requirements for this area of the town. In other words, in some areas of the town, we have 10-foot asphalt paths. In some areas of the town, we have, mulch trails and other sorts of things, depending on what the trail plan says. In this particular instance, the trail plan doesn't have any of those things. So the standard would be a 6-foot sidewalk along the rights of way. So the only thing, but that will be within the right of way, at the edge of the right of way.
I thought a collector in general.
Well, Collector Street is, but a Collector Street has a 50-foot right of way, but within that right of way, it's just whatever improvements that, so the street itself won't take up that whole 50 feet. It'll be just a portion of it.
Oh,
If you know what I mean.
Well, there was an insert in here that showed the collector, and it said collector streets have a bike
lane.
That was an excerpt from the thoroughfare plan showing a notional Collector Street and why we would need 100 feet right away. In this particular instance, we wouldn't need a bike. The transportation or the bicycle and pedestrian plan doesn't require a trail. So all we'd do is the ordinance only requires a sidewalk. So that's all we'd have them built, is a sidewalk along the road. That road section is not going to take up all that whole 50 feet. So there's going to be some green space in that right of way.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Did you have any further comments to add?
Yeah, the drainage.
I am going to address drainage. Clarification, so as we talked about, that northbound lane, we're not going to impact the east side of it. We are widening it on our side. It'll be 12 feet for that northbound lane. So as you're coming from the south, the road will transition and it'll widen, so it'll almost do like a little bit of a shift in order to widen that lane and make it safer, so that as you have that queuing and that stacking, you'll have adequate room to pass. So we didn't want just the 10-foot lane passing lane. It is a full 12-foot width in order to pass the buses and the cars that are stacking if we do have that situation where they're waiting to turn left to get into the school. So just for that, we just wanted to clarify that one. From a drainage standpoint, the site drains in 3 different directions. We are working with both the town of Avon as well as the Hendricks County Survey Department, because we are in an area that is a restricted release rate. So we know that drainage is always a concern. So we are greatly reducing the runoff from our site through our 2 detention basins that were discussed earlier. We have a dry basin on the east side, which will basically be addressing the parking lot, and the remainder of the site gets addressed through the wet detention basin at the northwest portion of the site. The release rates are restricted through outlet control structures that'll be maintained. We have water quality as well to address the quality of water that's leaving the site. During construction, we have a phased SWIP plan that will be addressing stormwater management during construction, especially to minimize any, because we know the greatest pollutant during construction is sediment. And so making sure that we're keeping the dirt and all of our soil on the site to the best of our capability, and minimizing how much is leaving our site, whether through our waterways or through the roadways.
Is any of the drainage being handled through those 2 green spaces on the north end of the property? Is there any anticipation that that will help to accommodate some of the?
So our site is a little higher, but we are capturing everything on our site and not draining over those green
So
spaces.
nothing is draining out, it's all
For the most
staying
part,
within
all
the
of our
property?
development, we're trying to pick up so that we can treat it. We want to make sure that we're able to treat that runoff. It's going to be very minimal. Anything leaving our site is really where we're tying our proposed grade to existing grade. Most of that disturbance is being collected so that we can treat it for water quality.
Thank you.
Right up, Greg, I think you addressed it. You were looking for maybe a waiver because of a drainage possible issue?
Yeah, there's one waiver pending. We had not a plan commission waiver, a stormwater ordinance waiver.
Okay.
Nothing major, nothing that we haven't seen
That's
before.
what I was looking for.
Still being
was our
addressed. though.
waiver.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Thank you. Discussion.
So so the outstanding items, and we've had this before, it's like, of the remaining outstanding items that need to be addressed before going to the council. I don't like sending the council a recommendation without us considering all the outstanding items. So why would we address this now and not wait for the outstanding items so we could have a complete package?
Well, the conditions that we have address the most recent impacts from the site. We would anticipate that there will be some minor deviations, and the council has the authority to change that condition. And we're making a condition, not a commitment, because these are all things that are going to be taken care of during the construction. So there's no real outstanding issues other than getting Hendricks County's Highway Department to tell us what kind of traffic calming they would prefer. And then also to do some calculations on the restrictive donation, both of which we anticipate to have by the council hears it. When the council hears it. I mean, staff's working on that information right now.
Okay.
But we don't have a lot, we don't have a great deal of, especially for a rezoning, unknowns in this particular one. We really have some very minor things to address.
And this is actually a pretty detailed condition.
Yeah, I would anticipate that we're going to get into the details of the traffic circle a little bit more. We're going to do the calculations associated with the restrictive donations a little bit more, and we've got to hear. And just today, I received an email from the superintendent of the highway department saying, yeah, he's looking at it. He's looking at options, and he'll definitely have it before the council. So the sort of outstanding issues we've got with the transportation things are relatively minor, and the details we'll have by the council, and the council will be able to fill those questions in when they, but it won't be significantly different than the condition we've outlined
Okay.
to you.
Then the traffic calming on 100 South, where you're working with county because the neighborhoods around are in the county. So,
And the street is, yeah, the streets in the county.
so does the county have to implement traffic calming, or is that it's our recommendation, but does the county, can they choose not to do that?
They could, I guess, but they don't want, all of our communications with the county, I mean, we have no way to compel the county to do anything. The county, it's the county's highway department, it's the county's road, so they can do it, but they want to do it. They're just trying to figure out what to do.
Okay.
Well, that was like trying to make 100 South that goes through Prestwick. I don't want to say limited access, but control the access flow that goes through there. I don't know. That's the county again that would do that.
I suppose, but it's a public street, so I don't know how you'd do it anyway. I mean, the public has rights to travel on public streets. That's why it's called a public right of way.
There was a question, Bill, if you can help us here on this, about what's changed from the comp plan from 2017 on land use, and where.
Nothing has changed, and I made that pretty clear in both my report and in the presentation, that the 2017 land use recommendation is agricultural, and historically, schools, churches, those types of institutional uses are consistent with agricultural and residential uses. It is not uncommon for a school to be in a rural area, to be inside a neighborhood, nor is it uncommon for a church to be in it, and that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about a 5-story hospital. We're talking about a school that serves the students that live in the residences in this community. So
I'd ask the audience to take your conversations outside if you need to speak. Thank you.
So, I mean, it's a school, and schools are consistent with and compatible with residential areas.
I think the only other item that I have outstanding that hasn't been addressed is, again, this same comment, is this the right location? And I'm not sure who can answer that.
I think another thing that was brought up several times related to that is the number of horse farms in the area. So the impact on wildlife and other agricultural properties surrounding, has that been considered?
We've considered them. We've done what we can to mitigate the adverse impacts of the land use. But as I said, my presentation is going to be the same as it always been. No, because it's a different land. Right now, it's an agricultural farm field, and now we're putting a school on it. So yeah, the area is going to change. There's going to be more ambient light. There's going to be a little bit more traffic. But I'm trying to remember what the other comment was. So I was going to address it, but I can't recall.
Horses.
Oh, the
Right
impact on
location.
them. Yeah, I don't know what impact that having a school is going to have on a horse farm. And wildlife impact, that one's not something that we looked at, wildlife impact.
How long has this school owned that property?
I'm not exactly certain. They've owned it for quite a while.
2010, I think it was.
I know what it was. Is this the right place? Well, in many instances, the right place is something that we do as planning. But when we're talking about a school system, the school board hires a superintendent, and the superintendent hires a staff. And these are men often with PhDs in education, and women who, and experience to make these calls. And that's, it's the superintendent, the assistant superintendents, the school board. Is this the right place for a school? They've made the decision that it is, and I would defer to them because their knowledge and experience far exceeds mine on what a school system needs for a middle school. And you should, the assistant superintendent came up and basically outlined that this is essentially the first step in a massive reorganization of the school system that's going to echo within the other school buildings in this community. But they need to get this one done first because the growth of our community dictates it. I don't know what to say because the school systems looked at it and said, we need it. And so it's not my job to say, no, they don't.
I think it's fair to point out too that every single neighborhood has had people objecting to it being built, including every single neighborhood, including Prestwick, including my neighborhood, including all the neighborhoods in that area. When those neighborhoods were built, people objected to it because they did not want homes on that property. Every single school that our children go to, somebody objected because it was going to ruin a person's quiet enjoyment of being able to look out over a farm field. We are a fast-growing community. We have excellent schools. It's something I like to brag about. And unfortunately, people want to live where they can send their children to excellent schools. I don't know any parent who likes the idea of their child attending a class in a trailer. And I consider this to be part of our growing pains, and the best thing we can do is try and manage it. I am assuming that that green space north of the projected building is there to help create a buffer and to create so that we don't have a school that is a playground or a football field that is 10 feet from someone's backyard. The elementary school I went to down in Johnson County, when I was there was literally horse fields right next up to the playground. And it was really cool when the horses would come up and the teachers are like, get away from those animals and everything. Those horse fields have been gone for a very, very long time. So I think the best thing we can do is, as you said, Bill, trust the experts. Our staff hires people who are experts in what they do. We have a traffic study done by people who are experts in that. We have our school systems being run by people who are experts, not only in teaching our children, but in understanding facilities. I'm very impressed with the proposal while understanding the frustration of the neighbors who live there. The good news is there's going to be another middle school for our children to attend where they will receive an excellent education and they won't be getting it in a trailer, or they won't be sitting in a classroom that is partitioned as part off of the gym. I am going to assume that the schools would not be asking for this middle school if Avon's community schools would not be asking for this new middle school if they didn't actually need it. Any further discussion?
I agree that I like the green space to the north. And I also like that on the south side, where there are some horse farms as well, is the baseball diamonds. And they did say those were not lit.
Mm-hmm.
So this should be less impactful. So I think the football field, which is more central, is probably lit, but the further south is not. So
right.
That's a good thing.
Maybe then a comment too, that listen to the comments that we're getting from the public about whether this is the right place for a school or not. I mean, we're having a public hearing for construction and development of our town. I think this is something where you also need to be at school board meetings and present your views there, because that's where it's all starting. And we're getting the end results here. So the voices are needed in the school board meetings too, and giving them your feedback, because just like I think it was Ms. North that pointed out there's other options that can be done, or have those options been pursued. I'm not an engineer, so I defer to you on what your comments were there about where else could schools be done. I think that's feedback that the schools need to hear, which they did hear tonight.
Any further discussion?
Well, I echo the same thing. When I looked at this and I saw how they positioned this school with the green space around it, the unlighted fields, as David said, the traffic flow, the way they've looked at 450 to ensure we have stacking lanes and turn lanes, and does not have an impact on people on the east side of the road. I think they've taken that into consideration. I think the thing that makes this somewhat tricky is we still have a couple outstanding items with traffic study. This is in the town of Avon. It's surrounded by roads that are in the county or subdivisions that are in the county. So as Paul said, we can go to school board meetings and says that. We can also go to the county meetings and go to them and let them know. Or this is just another reason why you should be considering annexing into the town of Avon. So I like what they've done.
I do too. If there's no further discussion, is anybody ready to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve 23-02 Avon Middle School West rezoning. I move a request for approval for a zoning map amendment to rezone 78.87 acres from agricultural to institutional to the town council with a favorable recommendation, subject to the following condition. The supporting road system shall be improved in the following manner. Dedicated left turn and right turn lanes shall be installed at each school entrance. A traffic circle shall be constructed at the intersection of County Road 100 South with County Road 450 East, and a three-way stop shall be implemented. A restrictive donation for improvements at the intersection of County Road 450 East with County Road 200 South shall be submitted to the town, and the town shall program and construct the improvements. And an acceptable traffic calming improvement shall be installed along County Road 100 South in accordance with the requirements of the Hendricks County Highway Department.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Let's take a vote.
For.
Against.
4.
For.
Against.
4.
Okay. Do we have any other business?
Yes, we have one other thing,
Bill,
and that is
If
a
I-
resolution for an amendment to the.
Bill, if I could,
Oh, sorry.
just for information, then this will be considered at the town council meeting. Do we know which town council meeting yet?
So
okay.
anyone who's interested in finding out the final resolution of this would be advised to attend that town council meeting.
And provide public comment.
Mhm. Welcome. Next item, go ahead.
This is a resolution for the amendment to the Avon Economic Development Area expansion for the Eastern Gray allocation areas. And the petitioner on this one is the town manager.
Good evening. Hopefully this is the easiest thing you do today. If you guys recall, actually last year we came to the Plan Commission, and you guys are part of the process in creating a TIF district. And so when we do that, we have to show that it's an area that's planned for development. So you'll notice in your exhibits that this is Easton Gray. So you guys actually did this last year. The only thing that's changing is the development of Easton Gray, their phasing plan has slightly changed. So in order for us to match our allocation areas to their phasing plan, we're simply amending what you guys already actually approved and what the redevelopment commission already approved. So this is a process. The redevelopment commission actually started the process and passed a declaratory resolution. Then it's part of the plan commission's goal to say this area that we are creating a TIF district for is consistent with our comp plan and our development plans, which obviously it is because we've passed a rezoning for Easton Gray. And then it goes on to the town council, and the town council actually has the final responsibility.
Ian,
Somebody get the door, please.
get the door, please. Thank you.
So all we're asking for you tonight is to find that the Easton Gray development is consistent with the town's plans for growth and development, and that's what your resolution is here for tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Is there a resolution number on here that we can refer to?
We don't normally number the resolutions of the plan commission.
Okay.
There's no, this is all in favor, or is this a vote, Mr. Taylor?
It's not a case, so you can either have a roll call or you can vote all at once. And I think it's really the chair's prerogative unless another member objects.
Would anybody like to make a motion to approve this resolution presented by the town of Avon?
I'll make the motion. We approve order of the Avon Advisory Plan Commission determining that a resolution amending the declaratory resolution approved and adopted by the Avon Redevelopment Commission conforms to the comprehensive plan in approving said resolution as amended.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I have one thing before we, that gentleman did ask a question at the very beginning that we're not part of any discussion or having any conversation, but I just want to make certain, are you going to look into that or?
Well, I did this morning. Yeah, I received almost identical email on that this morning. And I forwarded the gentleman, the contact to the developer. I mean, is a developer, so it's a tree on either side of a property line. So that is a private issue between those two property owners. So that's something for them to negotiate with each other. And I doubt very highly that, you know, a developer is going to make some sort of affirmative commitment that if a tree dies on an adjoining piece of property, sometime in the 5 years after they've cleared a tree line, that they're going to agree to compensate these property owners for the removal or replanting of those trees. But it's definitely not an issue for the town to handle. It's a private matter between those two property owners. And that's what I said today, this morning.
And yeah, we're not gonna, it doesn't involve us, and we're not going to give legal advice to either party. They can get their own legal advice from somewhere else.
Okay. Committee reports. Anybody?
Redevelopment Commission at our last meeting, 6 points of interest from last Monday's August 21st meeting. Invoice approvals, updates for 100 South and Dan Jones widening. Avon Community School Corporation had a technology request. We began a 2024 TIF budget discussion and the aforementioned declaratory resolution for Easton Gray.
Okay. BZA?
Board of Zoning Appeals had 2 variances of development standards, of which they approved both. It was for enlargement of sign area for the gables of Avon sign, in addition to the illumination of that sign as well.
Any other committee reports? Okay, and unless there is anything else we need to discuss for the good of the order, This meeting is adjourned.